What's up, everyone? Welcome to Metagame Mastery with our first day of Dominaria full art previews. Lots of information to go over. If you enjoy our content, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. If you're looking to get more information about the previously leaked cards, you can go to our other video where I cover full analysis on all 142 of them. Without further ado, big time! Go time! Let's go! First up, we have Hierorrhoid Explorer. He's 4 CMC, 3 colorless, and a blue for a 3/3 Hierorrhoid Scout. When he enters the battlefield, target player puts the top 4 cards of his or her library into their graveyard. So, what does that mean? Is there going to be a mill strategy in Limited? I don't know for sure, but what I really think this guy's going to do is he's going to interact real well with the Graveyard Matters strategies. In Golgari, there's a sub-theme of reanimation with funguses. In green, there's a sub-theme of getting lands in your graveyard. In red, there's getting instants and sorceries into your graveyard. So he's going to interact really well with those Graveyard Matters strategies and help you enable those. Here we have Phyrexian Scriptures. It's a mythic rare. It costs 4 CMC, 2 colorless, black, for an enchantment Saga. Sagas are a new card type that are enchantments. When they enter the battlefield, you put a lore counter on them, and then you put another lore counter on them for after each draw step. Each time you put a lore counter on it, you take that total and follow the effect listed on the card. And then after the third lore counter is placed on it, you sacrifice the card. So when this enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature. That creature becomes an artifact in addition to its other types. Then when the second lore counter is put on it, usually after your next draw step, there are ways to manipulate that though. I'll come back to them. You get to destroy all non-artifact creatures. So that's kind of cool. It's like a delayed reaction damnation that saves one of your creatures. And then the third and last lore counter, exile all cards from all opponents' graveyards. That does matter somewhat, especially in limited games where there seems to be a very strong Graveyard Matters theme in this set. But people are already talking about abusing this, coming up with different ways to remove counters from it so that you can perpetually destroy all non-artifact creatures every single turn with cards like, say, Power Conduit. And here's the buy a box promo of Firesong and Sunspeaker. Also, the first time we're going to get to see the new frame for legendary creatures. It's kind of interesting. I don't think it's overly eye-popping, but it's nice to look at. And this particularly legendary creature is 6 CMC, 4 colorless, red, white for a 4/6 legendary Minotaur Cleric. Red instant and sorcery spells you control have lifelink, and whenever a white instant or sorcery spell causes you to gain life, Firesong and Firespeaker deals 3 damage to target creature or player. So this basically gives Lightning Helix ability to all your spells, whether they be general life gain spells or just regular burn spells. And with Lightning Helix, it gets really nuts. This is going to be a really, really cool commander more than anything. He's going to interact really positively with the existing cards out there and really create a whole new archetype for this color pairing. I'm really looking forward to seeing what people put together with this. Also, I really like the art for these two. And here we have Flame of Keld. Now, this is interesting just for the fact that Sagas will be available at Uncommon as well as Mythic, and I assume Rare as well. So this one's only 2 CMC, 1 colorless, and a red, and it's, of course, an enchantment Saga. When it enters the battlefield, though, you discard your hand. That's a pretty hefty toll right there. When the second lore counter is placed on it, you get to draw 2 cards. And then the third one, if a red source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player this turn, it deals that much damage +2 to that permanent or player instead. I like that in the fact that if you've already dumped your hand, there's no downside to playing this card, and you get the sort of delayed reaction card advantage on your next turn. This is really good for those aggressive hell-bent decks in Standard right now. And then on the third turn, you can just really push through a ton of damage with your Hazarets, your Lightning Strikes, whatever the case may be. You just dump it all out on the board. So that's actually a potential really powerful finisher in Standard. Sera Disciple is 2 CMC, 1 colorless, and a white for a 1/1 bird cleric with flying and first strike. Whenever you cast a historic spell, Sera Disciple gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Now, historic spells are artifacts, legendaries, and sagas. But because this is on the cast, it won't interact with legendary lands. Very important distinction to make there. There are other cards that aren't on the cast, and I'll show you an example in a second, that do interact with legendary lands. That said, we'll have to see just how prevalent historic is in limited. This guy, just looking at him, 2 mana for a 1/1, even with flying and first strike, doesn't feel very good. So it really depends on whether or not you're going to be able to dive deep into that historic legendary matters strategy in limited to make this card worthwhile. Now, here's an example of a card that does interact with legendary lands. It's Guardians of Kolos. It's 5 CMC for a 4/4 artifact creature construct. And when he enters the battlefield, you may return another target historic permanent you control to its owner's hand. So the fact that it can possibly interact with legendary lands is relevant, but at the same time, what I'm looking at this guy for is enter the battlefield, abusing enter the battlefield effects on legendaries, abusing enter the battlefield effects on artifacts, and more specifically, getting repeatable value out of your sagas, letting them tick from 1 to 2, and then before they can get that third tick, bounce it back to your hand and get the effects all over again. Here we have an example of the kicker mechanic, which is being reintroduced in this set. It's Academy Drake. It's 3 CMC, 2 colorless, and a blue for a 2/2 Drake with kicker 4. He has flying, and if he was kicked, he enters the battlefield with 2 +1/+1 counters on it. So they're somewhat modal, right? If you don't pay the kicker, he's just 3 CMC for a 2/2 flyer, which is fine. He's okay curve filler. But then if the game goes long, you draw him later. Rather than him being an underpower card, you can pay 7 mana for him, and he becomes a 4/4 flyer, which is still underpowered. I'm not super stoked about this card, but he could potentially do work for you in limited. Here we have Sapling Migration. It's 2 CMC, 1 colorless, and a green for a sorcery. Kicker 4, create 2 1/1 green sapling creature tokens. If the spell was kicked, create 4 of those tokens instead. Now, this one I'm actually pretty stoked about because saplings are getting a dragon fodder with potential upside. So I'm not super stoked about casting this for 6 mana, right? That goes without saying. But you do have that option in case the game goes long. What I do love about this is we're getting a sapling version of dragon fodder, and there's going to be a sapling and fungus sub-theme specifically in Golgari colors. So this is actually going to do serious work for you if you're drafting into that. Keep an eye out for this in limited. Vicious Offering is 2 CMC, 1 colorless, and a black instant. It has a kicker cost of sacrifice a creature. Target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. If the spell was kicked, that creature gets -5/-5 until end of turn instead. So what we're looking at here is a control spell plus a sack outlet. This is going to be very good for the aristocrats type theme strategy available in Golgari colors and the overall reanimation theme in black in this specific format. So we're kind of looking at a cross between Dismember, which is way OP, and Bone Splinters, which is kind of underwhelming. Either way, when you put them together, this is going to be very good removal. First pickable in most packs for your limited environment. Keldon Overseer is 3 CMC, 2 colorless, and a red for a 3/1 human warrior with haste. He also has a kicker of 3 colorless and a red. When Keldon Overseer enters the battlefield, if he was kicked, gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap that creature. It gains haste until end of turn. So It's 3 mana for a 3/1 haste. Already very fragile. I'm not stoked about that. Or 7 mana for a 3/1 creature with haste with a threaten effect stapled on. Still very fragile and then very expensive. I'm not high on this card. Knight of Grace is 2 CMC, 1 colorless and white for a 2/2 human knight with first strike, hexproof from black, and Knight of Grace gets +1/+0 as long as any player controls a black permanent. This guy is sweet at uncommon. First and foremost, he's a bear with upside, being a 2/2 with first strike and hexproof from a relevant removal color. Right there, that's very solid. Not to mention the fact that he can potentially attack for 3 if someone plays a black permanent. Now, we already know that Knight Tribal is going to be a black-white sub-theme in this set. So you can play your own Black Knight and power this guy up, getting a ton of value off of this card for only 2 mana. Urza's Ruinous Blast, the OG original main character of Magic the Gathering, is a 5 CMC legendary sorcery. Now, legendary sorceries are a new card type. They're basically the same as any other sorcery, but you have to already have a legendary creature or planeswalker in play to cast them, but they typically have a huge effect. In this particular case, it's exile all non-land permanents that aren't legendary. So this is going to be very good and limited if you're going, say, deep into a legendary tribal strategy. But this is also going to be amazing in Commander, just being a Voltron deck's best friend. I'm super, super excited to play this card. That's it for today, folks. If you enjoy our content, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. This has been Metagame Mastery. Peace!